Between 4000 and 2100 BC, West Asiatic or Mesopotamian architecture originated in present-day Iraq and Iran, flourishing in the fertile region between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, known as Mesopotamia. Harnessing these rivers allowed for fertile landscapes, ample crops, surplus food storage, urban growth, and specialization. There are 6 key elements that influences the architecture, and these are: geographical. The ancient cities of Western Asia were located in the fertile valley of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Mesopotamia, the region between the rivers, was highly cultivated and supported a large population. Early buildings were erected at the mouth of the rivers, similar to Egypt's early structures near the Nile Delta. Civilization spread northwards from Babylon to Nineveh in Western Asia and southwards from Memphis to Philae in Egypt. Geological. Chaldea, or Lower Mesopotamia, is an alluvial region formed by the deposits of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The lack of stones and trees led to the widespread use of sun-dried bricks as the primary building material. In Assyria, where stone was more available, walls were faced with alabaster or limestone slabs carved with bas-reliefs and inscriptions. Bitumen or pitch was used as a cementing material in some cases. Climate. The swamps and aggressive insects in Chaldea necessitated the construction of elevated platforms for towns and palaces. The rainy season caused floods, reinforcing the need for elevated structures. Persia is a high tableland with varying climates, including extremes of heat and cold. Religion. The people in the region worshipped celestial bodies like the sun and the moon, as well as natural powers such as wind and thunder. They were highly superstitious, as evidenced by the numerous surviving omen tablets. Ormuzd, the god of light and goodness, was worshipped with fire as his symbol, while Ahriman represented darkness and evil. Worship seemed to have taken place in the open air, with no specific need for temples or images. Man-headed bulls placed at temple and palace entrances likely had a mythological significance, possibly related to benevolent genii or major deities in the Chaldean pantheon. Social and political. The Assyrians were a sturdy and warlike people, known for their cruelty in battles and conquests. Thousands of prisoners captured in battles were employed to build enormous mounds and platforms, as seen in Nineveh. Assyrian sculptures depict social conditions, costumes, and military character of the time, serving as an illustrated history of the period's battles and political events. Cuneiform characters, written in clay tablets or cylinders, were used for inscriptions and formed libraries that provided knowledge of the social condition of the time. The Persian poet Omar Khayyam also indicates the national love of beauty and the influence of environment and climate in the region. Historical. Early Babylonian Empire, founded by Enkidu, BC 4500, extended northwards following the Tigris River. Assyria asserted independence in BC 1700 and became a dominant power in Western Asia. Sargon was a celebrated Assyrian king, defeated the Egyptian army in alliance with the Philistines. Assyrians conquered Egypt in BC 672, but were eventually driven out by the Egyptians. Nineveh was destroyed in BC 609, and Assyria was divided among conquerors. Babylon took the leading place until conquered by the Persians in BC 539. Under Darius and Xerxes, impressive palaces were built at Susa and Persepolis. Persia ruled until BC 333, when Alexander the Great conquered the region. In the 7th century AD, the Arabs settled in the region, and later the Turks took control, leading to the country's current desolate state due to Turkish misrule.
The architecture in the Tigris and Euphrates region was influenced by the abundance of clay and scarcity of suitable wood for building. The huge platforms for temples and palaces were made from compressed clay and sun-dried bricks, later faced with kiln-burnt bricks or stone slabs. The use of brick limited the shapes and allowed only attached ornamentation. Arches were employed for important openings and vaults, with true arches possibly discovered accidentally due to the lack of suitable materials. Arches were crucial for supporting walls in the absence of piers and played a significant role in the architectural style. The architecture in Chaldea and Assyria lacked isolated supports due to the scarcity of suitable stone. They mainly used stone as an envelope for brick walls. Persia, with abundant stone, utilized it for walls and columns. Persian architecture was influenced by Assyria, and later borrowed from Egypt and Asiatic Greece. The scroll capitals of Persepolis and Susa retained the form of wooden prototypes, illustrating the transition from wood to stone. The palaces were adorned with enameled bricks and glazed brickwork. The effect of towering palace monuments on great platforms can only be imagined. In Asia Minor, buildings displayed stone forms derived from timber structures, seen in Lycian tombs and Greek architecture. As stone architecture developed, the influence of timber forms gradually diminished. West Asiatic architecture examples. The First Babylonian. The First or Babylonian period was marked by temple building. The main remains include the Temple of Burs, Nimrud, near Babylon, and the temple at Khorsabad. The Temple of Burs, Nimrud, was dedicated to the 7 heavenly spheres. In Chaldea, each city had its ziggurat, a holy mountain with a decorated temple chamber serving as an observatory. These temples were several stories high, constructed with receding terraces, and made of different colored glazed bricks. They were enclosed by walls, and their angles faced the cardinal points. The Babylonians attempted to build a tower reaching to heaven, as mentioned in Genesis 11:4. Both Western Asia and Egypt were known for their audacious attempts at artificial elevations. The Second or Assyrian period. The Second or Assyrian period was a palace-building epic, ending with the destruction of Babylon by Cyrus in BC 539. The main remains include the palaces at Nineveh, Koyunjik, Nimrud, and Khorsabad. The Palace of Sargon, Khorsabad, BC 722 to 705, is the best example, covering an area of 25 acres and raised on a terrace 46 feet above the plain. The palace had 3 main groups of apartments: seraglio, harem, and khan, service chambers. The great entrance portals on the southeast facade were adorned with 10 human-headed winged bulls, 19 feet in height. The palaces of Sennacherib, Nineveh, and Ashur-nasir-pal, Nimrud, provided valuable information on Assyrian palaces. The roofing method is still debated, with some suggesting beams resting on the walls, and others proposing the use of arches and domed roofs. The Third or Persian period. The Third or Persian period, from Cyrus to Alexander the Great, has significant remains at Susa, Persepolis, and Pasargad. Persians adapted Assyrian architecture due to the lack of their own style. Persepolis, an important Persian capital, had 8 buildings on a large platform, 1,500 feet long by 1,000 feet wide, with different levels. Darius's palace, Hall of the 100 Columns, and Xerxes's buildings are notable examples at Persepolis. The Hall of the 100 Columns was 225 feet square, with impressive bas reliefs and unique column capitals. Susa's palaces of Xerxes and Artaxerxes had excellent colored and glazed brickwork. The tomb of Darius, Naksh-i-Rustam, near Persepolis, had a rock-cut facade with double bowl columns. Hebrew, Jewish, architecture borrowed from Egyptian, Assyrian, Greek, and Roman sources, with the temple at Jerusalem being the most significant structure, commenced by Solomon and later added to by Herod. Comparative study of architectural elements. Plans. Special character given by raising temples on terraces or platforms and grouping buildings around quadrangles. Unlike Egyptian pyramids, Assyrian ziggurats had angles facing the cardinal points. Assyrian palaces designed for both internal and external effect due to being raised on platforms. Walls. Early Assyrians used stone as a facing for brick walls, contrasting with Greek and Egyptian solid marble and granite constructions. Assyrian walls mainly consist of cased brickwork, while Persia has survived stone and marble blocks. Alabaster slabs on palace walls reveal social history and are now in the British Museum. Openings. Lighting in Assyrian temples was achieved through a clerestory similar to Egyptian temples. Large doorways were relied upon for light and air, possibly with additional openings in upper walls. Assyrians used both circular and pointed arches, evident from discoveries at Nimrod and Khorsabad. Roofs. Roofs in Assyrian buildings were likely supported by timber beams resting on the double bowl capitals. Some halls may have had brick tunnel vaults, but many had flat roofs made of tough clay and sea iris. There is evidence of the use of domes in Assyrian architecture, as shown in bas reliefs at Koyunjik, and historical accounts mention vaulted houses in Babylon. Columns. Initially, Assyrian columns were made of wood, but later, at Persepolis, they were built of natural stone. The capitals of Assyrian columns were of various types, including the double bull, double griffin, double unicorn, double horse, and some with the Ionic scroll design. Assyrian columns were not as massive as those in Egypt, as they did not need to support stone roofs. Moldings. Moldings were not extensively used in Western Asia, similar to Egypt. In Assyrian palaces, sculpted slabs and colored surfaces replaced the use of moldings. At Persepolis, some moldings like bead, hollow, and ogi were used in the bases, but the volutes of the capitals were treated with plain sinkings. Ornaments. The Assyrian sculptures show considerable technical skill and refinement. Bronze bowls, shields, and gate fittings also display intricate riposte pattern work. The decorative treatment of Assyrian architecture influenced the peculiar and characteristic detail later used by the Greeks. Sculpted slabs depict buildings with columns and capitals of Ionic and Corinthian form in their early stages. Greece adopted the idea of sculpted friezes, colored decorations, and ornaments like the honeysuckle and gyochi from Assyria. Thank you for watching. In the next video, we will talk about Greek architecture.